I'm Dr. Sri Banity for the College of Health Sciences and Public Policy at Walden University with the Joint Faculty Appointment at Ross University School of Medicine. In this lecture, I'll be going over the need for environmental justice. So when chemicals, chemical spills take place, whether in a train wreck or some sort of accident, and which is taking a lot of cargo, which could be potentially deadly for humans. So understanding that some of these toxicants are disproportionately affecting marginalized populations is especially important to hone in on. So instead of making this part of multiple videos, I decided, and lectures, I decided to create just one lecture and video for individuals that are studying environmental justice. And again, the intention is not to take a lot of time explaining this, but as long as you have kind of a foundation, this will serve to do so. So advancing environmental justice in EPA's land protection and cleanup programs. I want to take here as historic stance, which is not usually do in other lectures, but here it's especially pertinent. What happened in 1968? So this is going into how did the environmental justice movement arise. So if you're not aware of some of the historical context, it's important. February 11th, 1968, the Memphis sanitation strike was an action taken against unfair treatment and environmental justice concerns in Memphis, Tennessee. And this incident is actually important because it was investigated by activist Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who of course was a major leader in the civil rights movement. The strike advocated for fair play and better working conditions for Memphis garbage workers. And this was the first time African Americans mobilized a national, broad-based group to oppose environmental injustices. So then we go to 1979, and of course when you're looking at policy, a lot of these trials are automatically looked at. So Bean versus Southwestern, and of course if you're studying to become a lawyer, then these are ones that you have to know. So Bean versus Southwestern Waste Management Corporation and the formation of Northeast Community Action Group. So fortunately, there were, in 1979 of December, the individuals in Houston, Texas, again, a group of African American homeowners began a bitter fight to keep the Whispering Pines sanitary landfill from being placed within 1,500 feet of local public schools. And that's within 2 miles of 6 schools. Residents formed the Northeast Community Action Group as a result of that, and their attorney, Linda McEver Bullard, filed a class action lawsuit to block the landfill from being built. So their lawsuit, Bean versus Southwestern Waste Management, was the first of its kind in the United States that charged environmental discrimination in waste facility, citing under civil rights laws. This lawsuit ultimately failed to prevent the, well, it was actually good. The lawsuit ultimately failed to, well, it didn't, it's a double negative. So even though the construction of the landfill took place, it sent a clear message for environmental justice cases across the country. So this was actually a source that created more movements. forward here. In 1982, September, they sit in against Warren County. So PCB is polychlorinated biphenyl. I've actually studied some of them and have some original studies regarding polychlorinated biphenyl landfill in Warren County, North Carolina. In this case, again, African Americans mobilized a national broad-based group with non-violent sit-in protest against a PCB landfill. 500 environmentalists and civil rights activists were arrested, and the protest was unsuccessful in halting construction. But again, this was a precedent that was developing as a catalyst for the environmental justice movement. So it was just picking up, and of course, April of 1983, Dr. Robert Bullard, you might have seen the Bullard name before, but that was husband to Linda McKeever Bullard. The attorney for the plaintiffs in Mean versus Southwestern Waste Management conducted a first of its kind study documenting the location of municipal waste disposal facilities in Houston. So all of these were kind of in the context of each other, and so solid waste sites was and the Houston community, by the way, which in the city I've been to, was the first comprehensive account of environmental racism in the United States. So as you can see, this has a long history. It doesn't it wasn't affected and implemented in one night or in one day. You have to understand the context of the research and the protesting and the policies before creating and enacting any sort of intervention. So prompted by the 1982 Warren County sit-in, which I told you about previously, the United States in 1983 General Accounting Office, the GAO, conducted the study. So this was citing of hazardous waste landfills and their correlation with racial and economic status of surrounding communities. I'm not going to open this, but this study is said to have galvanized the environmental justice movement and provided empirical support for the claims of environmental justice. I'm going to quickly provide you some of this, and this is the original paper from which the GAO actually cited hazardous waste landfills. Again, this is a dated text. Trying to look for the actual date of this. So this was from 1983, and again, this was all typed at that time on a typewriter. And you can see how the Warren County PCB landfill was in fact, if you look at individuals in poverty level, 32% of the individuals were affected by the landfill. Mean family income. So, for instance, for comparing to, of course, percent and percent black. So even though this is the comparison here, so Warren County, let's focus on that. Even though most individuals experienced the polychlorinated biphenyl, only 32%, but the percent black is 90%. So there is a disparity here, and important to possibly explore in a geospatial context some of what's going on in Warren County. People still feel the effects, even though this was years ago. Again, some of these other percentages and percent black, there's disparities. So and the industrial chemical company was 26% and then 92%. So here's the PCB landfill location report, and then RECRA requires that any company owning or operating a hazardous waste landfill must be permitted. The Act provides procedures to allow landfills that were in operation. So what was interesting about the RECRA was that it didn't take into consideration the fact that once the money runs out, what will happen? And that's why this movement of, I can tell you the full form of RECRA, but or provide you with some important parts of RECRA hazardous waste. So it stands for Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, and that's the public law which created the impetus for FDA regulations. But the law describes the waste management program, and there's a lot of tools, RECRA tools and resources, and state officials. So this goes into a lot more, but I just wanted to make you aware of this. So let's go back to the environmental justice. So 1983 was that, and then 1987 we see the United Church of Christ Commission on Racial Justice released toxic waste in the United States publication. So they created a documented publication. The UCC examined the statistical relationship between the location of a hazardous waste site and the racial and socioeconomic composition of host communities nationwide. And the study found that over 15 million African Americans, 8 million Hispanics, and half of all Asian Pacific Islanders and Native Americans resided in communities with at least one abandoned or uncontrolled toxic waste site. So usually what is interesting when most of the cleanup has taken place, the property value of that area increases. So even though it's a cleaned and controlled toxic waste, people would not mind living next to it because most of the chemicals have been cleaned up. But areas where they're abandoned or still uncontrolled toxic waste leaching into the groundwater potentially and affecting the drinking water and all the plants that grow over there, over the toxic waste that can potentially result in human consumption of this. And of course livestock feeds on the same area, and so a lot of times going up the food chain, people are affected, humans. So just going into this in more detail, this took place now, we're already getting into 1987, March of 1988, the West Harlem Environmental Action, WE Act, was founded. And so North River Sewage Treatment Plant was created to address ongoing West Harlem community struggles. So North River Sewage Treatment Plant had poor management. So the construction of the 6th bus depot across from an intermediate school and a large housing development, a densely populated and heavily trafficked area. So WE Act evolved into an environmental justice organization committed to empowering the community to become a vocal, informed, and proactive force that determines and implements its vision of what its environment can and should be. This was one of the first, it is considered one of the first environmental justice organization created to improve environmental and health equity. So WE Act is important in 1988. In 1990, there was the Indigenous Environmental Network, and this network was formed by grassroots indigenous peoples and individuals to address environmental and economic justice issues by building economically sustainable communities. So this IEN activities include building the capacity of indigenous communities and tribal governments. Now we're getting into 1990. Dr. Bunyan Bryant and Dr. Paul Mohai organized the Michigan Conference on Race and the Incidence of Environmental Hazards at the University of Michigan. So this was known as the Michigan Coalition. And they actually met with the EPA throughout the 90s. So their work didn't stop there. The SNEEJ, which is Southwest Network for Environmental and Economic Justice. This was another one formed in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And this is April 1990. Congressional Black Caucus meets with EPA officials April 1990. EPA administrator creates the Environmental Equity Work Group. So this is as early as 1990. Then Dumping in Dixie, Race, Class, and Environmental Equality, the nation's first environmental justice book. And that was Dr. Robert Bullard. So there's stories of 5 efforts by communities of color to secure their right to live in a healthy environment. 91 First National People of Color Environmental Leadership Summit. There are 17 principles of environmental justice that came out of this. I'm going to open up the 17 principles, and I'm not going to go through all of these, but we, the people of color, gathered together at this multinational People of Color Environmental Leadership Summit to begin to build a national and international movement of all peoples of color to fight the destruction and taking of our lands and communities. Do hereby reestablish our spiritual interdependence to the sacredness of our Mother Earth, to respect and celebrate each of our cultures, languages, and beliefs about the natural world and our roles in healing ourselves, to ensure environmental justice, to promote economic alternatives which would contribute to the development of environmentally safe livelihoods, and to secure our political, economic, and cultural liberation that has been denied for over 500 years of colonization and oppression, resulting in the poisoning of our communities and land and the genocide of our peoples. So what are the principles of environmental justice? Environmental justice affirms the sacredness of Mother Earth. Environmental justice demands that public policy be based on mutual respect and justice for all peoples. Mandates environmental justice. Number 3 mandates the right to ethical, balanced, and responsible uses of land. Number 4 environmental justice calls for universal protection from nuclear testing, extraction, production, and disposal of toxic waste and poisons, and nuclear testing that the fundamental right to clean air, land, water, and food. Environmental justice affirms the fundamental right to political, economic, cultural, and environmental self-determination of all peoples. Environmental justice number 6 demands the cessation of the production of all toxins, hazardous waste, and radioactive materials. Environmental justice number 7 demands the right to participate as equal partners. 8. Environmental justice affirms the right of all workers to a safe and healthy environment. Number 9, environmental justice protects the right of victims of environmental justice to receive full compensation. Number 10, environmental justice considers government acts of environmental injustice a violation. Environmental justice must recognize the special legal and natural relationship of native peoples of the United States. Number 12, environmental justice affirms the need for urban and rural ecological policies. Environmental justice calls for strict enforcement of principles of informed consent. Environmental justice opposes the destructive operations of multinational corporations. Number 15, environmental justice opposes military occupation and repression. Environmental justice number 16 calls for education in the present and future generations, which emphasizes social and environmental issues. And then number 17 requires that we as individuals make personal and consumer choices to consume as little of Mother Earth's resources and to produce as little waste as possible. So that is the environmental justice commitment, and there's 17 of them. 1992, we're back to looking through policies. Deep South Center for Environmental Justice, founded at Xavier University of Louisiana, the nation's first EJ Center. University of Michigan's Environmental Justice Program, again Bunny and Bryant and Paul Mulcahy, authors of Race and the Incidence of Environmental Hazards, launched the first environmental justice program. June of 1992, Reducing Risk for All Communities was created by the Environmental Equity Work Group. November of 1992, then, Office of Environmental Equity is established. And then that was the environmental equities established. Then in 1992, November, Race and the Incidence of Environmental Hazards, the second EJ book ever published, took place. This is here. And that was called Dumping in Dixon. And that has a collection of 16 articles. September 1993, EPA Administrator creates the National Environmental Justice Advisory Council. And then EPA Environmental Justice Small Grant Program. So that was established in 94. And then the Environmental Justice Resource Center, founded at Clark University in Atlanta. I've actually been to Clark University. Environmental Justice Resource Center, founded at Clark Atlanta University. This is considered HBCU, historically black colleges and universities. EJRC. So February 11, 1994, Executive Order 12898. This was February 11, 1994, and Bill Clinton actually signed this into an executive order. And this was very important because for the first time, federal actions to address environmental justice in minority populations and low-income populations was recognized as a national level, and minority and low-income populations with the goal of achieving environmental protection for all communities. Also, an order established an interagency working group on environmental justice. This was May of 1995, first national interagency environmental public meeting. So plenary sessions, dialogue session, poster session, and televised session. So there's 11 federal agencies participating in the sections that I read off. Again, first national interagency environmental public meeting. So EPA and CEQ collaborate on NEPA to advance environmental justice. 1999, National Black Environmental Justice Network, NBEJ, in Lawnston, New Orleans. EPA issues memorandum on permitting, and this was December of 2000. And this opinion analyzed a number of regulatory authorities. 2001, Warren County PCB landfill is remediated. EPA administrator releases memorandum in support. Office of Environmental Justice prepares treaties. EPA offices, this is 2002, EPA offices begin implementing EJ action plans. October 2002, second People of Color Environmental Leadership Summit. And then Interagency Working Group Revitalization Projects. So there's about 15 IWG revitalization projects. And this ensures problem solving and sustainable solutions. Framework for Cumulative Risk Assessment, May of 2003. 2004 Collaborative Problem Solving Model and Environmental Justice Collaborative Public Problem Solving Grant Program. EPA issues toolkit to assist staff in conducting environmental justice assessments. December 2004. National Environmental Advisory Council, ensuring risk reduction in communities with multiple stressors. Community Action for a Renewed Environmental Program. NEJAC Issues Report, highlighting gentrification and displacement, and this was already taking place in 2006. Any of these you want to know more, I would encourage you to go to epa.gov/environmental justice. Toxic Waste and Race at 20, 2007. This study concluded that people of color are found to be more concentrated around hazardous waste facilities. And again, the United Church of Christ 1987 studies found that. EJ Showcase of Communities, 2009. 2009, again, Federal Partnership for Sustainable Communities. 2010, environmental justice is established as an agency-wide priority. March of 2010, Symposium on the Science of Disproportionate Environmental Health Impacts. July 2010, EPA issues interim rulemaking process guidance. White House Forum on Environmental Justice in 2010. 2011, Interagency Working Group Memo of Understanding, Plan EJ 2014 in September 2011. And this was a roadmap to assist EPA in integrating environmental justice into the agency's programs, policies, and activities. Environmental justice legal tools. This started in December 2011. Federal Agency Environmental Justice Strategies, 2012. 2012 March. There's an action blog launched by EPA regarding EJ. EJ Considerations, Environmental Justice Considerations and Permits. Introduction to Environmental Justice online training course. This has a history of 2014. Tribal and Indigenous Peoples Environmental Justice Policy, June of 2014. EPA Administrator and CEQ lead EJ IWG Principles meeting. CEQ lead, so this is something that's important. Guidance on considering environmental justice during the development of an action. This is May 2015. June 2015, EJ screen was released. And when it initially developed in 2012, this was actually updated. And this was, I've actually lectured on this tool and how to use this, but here's another visit if you don't have time to go into the previous video and lecture. So here's some tools, EJ screen tools that you can change around on the left. And this has actually spatial consideration as well. So I encourage you to look onto that. It's a very powerful tool. And then 2016, Promising Practices, a report for NEPA, National Environmental Policy Act. May 2016, final draft of EJ 2020 is introduced for public comment. And then EJ Technical Guidance Report. And then EJ IWG, the Environmental Justice Interagency Working Group. So EJ IWG Access and Awareness Series is launched. Final framework for EJ 2020 action agenda. So The EJ, and we've gone over a lot of material, but EJ 2020 Action Agenda was created. EJ 2020 is a strategic plan for advancing environmental justice for the years 2016 to 2020, building on the work of Plan EJ 2014. So there are three main goals EJ 2020 focus on: deepening environmental justice practice within EPA programs, and then work with partners to expand our positive impact within overburdened communities, and demonstrate progress on significant national environmental justice challenges. So this last and this final one is in August 2016 to 2020 has been released, and I encourage you to find that. So this wraps up this talk / video for environmental justice. Thank you for listening.